内が命。久しぶりだな、サスケ。
At night, I was awakened by a bright light coming in through my bedroom windows. I looked out the window to see what was going on. My father got out of the car. He often came home in the middle of the night because he's an officer, and his schedule is inconsistent. But what seemed suspicious to me was that he wasn't in his uniform, but in a shirt and slacks, and the car he was in seemed familiar to me. So, my father is a lieutenant colonel who serves in the U.S. Army. Therefore, like everyone in the military, he is very strict and disciplined. And of course, he raised his only daughter in the same way. He even gave me the name Liberty, which means freedom. When I grew up, I already possessed all the qualities of a warrior. I was disciplined, punctual, well-mannered, and quiet. All this helped me in my studies, but it was much more difficult for me to make friends. At this age, everyone wanted to goof off, but not me. One day, despite all my father's discipline, he overslept and made me miss the bus, and then he had to give me a lift to school. When we got into the parking lot, I saw our principal getting out of a car. My dad saw her too. My father is a man who isn't very talkative to begin with, but at that point, he was completely speechless, and he hadn't even said goodbye to me yet. I was very surprised by this, but I didn't show it. The day was boring, as usual. I was the best in the classroom. My classmates didn't like me showing off at all. So today, as always, I was completely friendless. However, the next day, a very strange thing happened. My father volunteered to give me a lift to school, which he had never done willingly before. We were driving along the highway, and there was a smile on his face. He smiles extremely rarely, mostly only on his mother's birthday, so I didn't understand the reason behind his good mood. When we arrived, everything immediately became clear to me. As soon as we got to the parking lot, he immediately jumped out of the car and ran to our principal's car. He, like the most gallant gentleman, held out a hand to her to help her out of her car. I couldn't believe my eyes. My dad, who used to bark at everyone, was now behaving just like a little puppy. I decided to leave as soon as possible so as not to see my principal and father flirting in the parking lot. During class, I couldn't even concentrate on my studies. I thought that my dad just decided to be gentlemanly towards a lady. Isn't that okay? Don't real men behave like that? But this idea was quickly destroyed when, after classes ended, I walked down the school hallway. I stopped when I heard laughter coming from behind the principal's closed door. I took a closer look to find out what was going on there. Two shadows held hands and stood motionless for a long time, looking at each other. I recognized both figures. The one that was large and has broad shoulders clearly belonged to my father, but the second was the figure of the principal. Now, that's just wrong. My father and the principal? I'm obviously winding myself up. To make sure I was badly mistaken, I leaned over to look through the keyhole. Of course, I lost my balance, pushed the door with my hand, and tumbled into the office. My father looked at me in confusion and quickly pushed the principal away. Oh, by the way, her name is Miss Knightley. He tried to get out of the situation and said that I was on time because the three of us were going to dinner. He didn't manage to rectify the situation. He just made me angry. Now fuming, I sat at the table and ate the salad that my dad and Miss Knightley made. Now they were really distracted, sitting and cooing sweetly at each other. If you think that this was the only time, then you are greatly mistaken. My principal practically moved in with us and was now at our place every evening. It pissed me off a lot. But at the end of the week, Dad and his new lady friend called to tell me interesting news. It turns out that he and Miss Knightley were going to go on vacation somewhere. While Dad could be given a vacation, the principal couldn't leave at the height of the school year. So they proposed an interesting idea. Knowing that I am very disciplined and responsible, Miss Knightley asked me to replace her at school. Of course, she wouldn't have dared to do this. My dad was the one who suggested it. He really wanted to go on vacation with her. This idea struck me as very stupid. Why not leave one of the teachers? But Miss Knightley, who could see the question in my eyes, said that she couldn't trust anyone, as many teachers couldn't wait for her to crack so they could take over her position. All this was very strange, and it seemed that such an idea was doomed to failure from the beginning. But seeing my father's puppy dog eyes, which asked me to agree for his sake, I just did that. I sat down and discussed with them how everything would happen. The next morning, as soon as I entered the school, the principal's voice announced over the loudspeaker that a new position for students had been introduced today. Lisa White was selected for the position of School Discipline Inspector. Yes, the position sounded incomprehensible, but it was intended that people wouldn't quite understand who I was and what kind of power I had, and also that they would ask as few questions as possible. When my classmates heard this, they weren't particularly surprised. They saw how I swear at those who throw garbage and are late for class, so no one even began to argue that the position of discipline inspector shouldn't have gone to me. But at the principal's office, teachers gathered and wanted to understand what it meant. The principal, who was already supposed to be on her way to meet my father with a suitcase, was forced to answer the teachers' questions and talk about my responsibilities. The moment she finished her long speech, she locked herself in her office. I knew what she was doing in there. Right now, she was passing the suitcase to Dad through the window, and then she left the building through it, herself. As soon as she left her office, all the power would be in my hands. During the day, I didn't do anything special. I just continued to study all the material and sit in the classroom. Our history teacher was very late, and I jokingly decided to tell him that if this happens again, then I, as a discipline inspector, will have to report it to the principal. He clearly didn't like what I said, and he decided to remain silent, as he didn't want to receive a reprimand. My classmates looked at me in surprise. At recess, I saw my classmate Ben throwing an empty bottle past the trash can. I went up to him and said that according to the new school charter, for the fact that he litters, he needs to run 2 penalty loops around the stadium or spend 2 hours after school cleaning the classrooms. Ben didn't believe me, thinking it was a prank. And then he remembered the incident with the teacher. Muttering something under his breath, he began to run. When Ben, a school bully, obeyed what I told him to do, the whole school seemed to see what was happening. Rumors began to spread about me that greatly strengthened my power. Believe me, initially, I didn't want to agree to this whole situation at all, but the more I felt I could influence something and make life at school a little better, the more I wanted to use my newly acquired power. After all, I really could build a new ideal society at school. A society where no one litters in the hallways, no one is late, and no one makes silly jokes in class instead of listening to what the teacher says. Even though I could influence a lot of students on pain of oppression and punishment, I couldn't find leverage on some of them. Those people would interfere and make fun of me, which affected my authority. However, I knew how to find a way to make them pay. After school, I went to the principal's office. I had a key. Miss Knightley left it to me so that I could do some small things related to her job, and also so that I periodically turn on and off the lights there, making it seem like the principal was there. So, I have known for a long time that she keeps personal information about each of the employees and students. In the office, I saw a small cabinet, a filing cabinet, that was locked. I had to search the entire office, but in the end, I found the key. I opened the closet door and greedily grabbed files at random. It was a real gold mine. To help you understand, there were even notes from our school psychologist about a student's fears and problems, which was very suspicious because the psychologist claimed that everything said is kept secret. I started reading the files. I was so carried away that in the morning I woke up not in my warm, cozy bed, but in the principal's chair, and heaps of folders were scattered around me on the table. And I didn't wake up on my own. The janitor woke me up. But now I knew what to do. In the hallway, I met Matt, our high school's swimming star. I went up to him and whispered in his ear that if he didn't do what I said, then everyone at school will know that he was afraid of cute, fluffy rabbits. Matt got angry, but controlled himself. I told him that tomorrow he should come in school uniform. He clearly didn't like it, unlike me, because I perfectly understood that the same uniform was very important for discipline. The next person I turned to was Anne. She had to stop being late for class, or I would tell everyone about the fact that she spreads gossip about everyone in order to remain the most popular girl in school herself. After a couple of days, all the students, following the example of Matt and Anne, wore school uniforms, came to class on time, and were very quiet. This is not to say that the teachers didn't suspect anything. They perfectly understood that something strange was happening at school. But firstly, it became easier for them to work, and secondly, they were afraid that some of their own secrets might come out. Look for yourself. Our school has become perfect. There was no more laughter in the classroom. Everyone was dressed in gray, and cleanliness reigned in the corridors, which made our school janitor especially happy. Everyone seemed to be happy, except the kids. As it turned out, fear and blackmail is not the best way to maintain control. At one point, I realized this. When I came to school in the morning, I saw parents in front of the building with posters and signs. They shouted something like, "School is not an army, freedom for the children," and yes, even shame on the principal. It seems that the other kids couldn't take the pressure and complained to their parents. At the same moment, I saw my dad and Miss Knightley coming back to the school. It was strange because they weren't supposed to return until next week. As it turned out later, someone from the PTA called her with complaints. Miss Knightley immediately ran over to the parents. I wanted to sneak away, but my dad caught me. He was clearly very upset that they had to end their vacation early. I understood that if I simply didn't do anything, they would have been in the wrong. But I took on too much and used dirty methods, blackmailing and threatening my classmates, and I also exposed my dad's girlfriend to criticism. As I'm sure you can guess, I didn't have any friends after that, but I was also punished. Every day until the end of the school year, I had to help our school janitor. Of course, he was as happy as before. Have you ever been given power? Were you able to handle it? Write your stories in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Subscribe.